Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 94th episode of the Spiritual Brainstorm. In this video, I'm going to be talking about artificial intelligence and our collective unconscious, which eventually will become a collective conscious, and a sort of a new way of seeing the merging of those two concepts. So, just the first thing is, I'm a big fan of blockchain technology, and especially the decentralized aspects of the technology, which in my mind reflect our advances in understanding the way our own body works. Before, in the 18th, 19th century, even 20th, if you were to pinpoint where intelligence resides in our body, everyone was fascinated with the brain and viewing the brain as kind of the boss of the body. But the end of the 20th and 21st century, we came to recognize that our body, our entire body, is intelligent. That is, our brain plays no role, for instance, in how our bones mend, for instance, when they break, or it doesn't micromanage how the stomach digests the food that it receives. It doesn't tell it which enzymes and which kind of digestive liquids it should create. So there's no micromanagement. Every single part is intelligent in its own design, in its own way, and they form a sort of a coherent whole, which is intelligent in itself. And so that's really important. And the brain is just one organ among many. And this decentralization, as opposed to governments running the show, which is kind of like, where you have the placenta, the umbilical cord, and the baby attached to it. During pregnancy, the development of the body of the baby is exponential, but a soft kind of exponential. Like if you plot it, it would be like this, kind of. Whereas us, in terms of population growth, it was more like this. So a very unbalanced kind of growth in our situation. Whereas here, every single new element that was integrated along the process of the baby's growth is instantaneously integrated in a harmonious way. Whereas us here, this is like doing nothing for most of the pregnancy and then having wars and pandemics and crises and stuff. And yet a very, very steep exponential growth where we do plenty of mistakes, we develop plenty of things at the same time and don't care to integrate them so that they interact in a harmonious way one with each other, be it countries, cultures, economic systems, production systems, all of that. In any case, this is because biology, of course, has the time to perfect the way that you grow a global organism, whereas us as a global organism, global humanity, let's call it that way, it's quite a new kind of process. So it's still experimental in a way. So what I wanted to say is this exponential growth in the womb is programmed. It's very much a controlled process. You could say by the genes, by DNA, by plenty of different things. And the placenta is really like also kind of the mediator between the mother, and the baby, and all the resources transit through it. And so you could say that this is kind of the boss of the baby, because if it dies, then the baby dies instantaneously as well, and the brain plays only a minor role It's just being prepared, just like blockchain technology is emerging right now and the decentralized movement is emerging because the various parts of humanity or of the baby are becoming mature enough to break away from this controlled kind of growth process and start working together. So while you're growing humanity, it is kind of an automated process that is controlled, programmed. But once the baby is full and fully formed, then the process is much less kind of controlled by this centralized kind of, like a government and all this system, because it has to be much more flexible. It has to depend on when the baby gets the food, which varies all the time, whereas here the resources flow continuously into the baby. And it has to adapt basically to what's happening on the outside. Like, is the baby in movement, in motion? Is it sleeping? In the womb, the baby is kind of always in the same kind of environment. It's very stable. So, blockchain and this decentralized technologies, in my mind, is sort of the form that this kind of process where the baby is almost fully formed, and starts working without having to have this very programmed and predictable growth, that is how it manifests in our reality because of the way that we've developed our consciousness, our model for understanding the universe, because it's based on science, materialist science, computers. It is bound to take that kind of form, the blockchain, which is basically a technology which just enables people to coordinate their actions without having to go knocking on at the door of daddy state, daddy government. You don't have to ask daddy government. You can just directly start coordinating between other people and create, for instance, a decentralized cooperative where each person buys a token which represents a part ownership of the decentralized cooperative and also allows you to vote on key decisions, allowing to delegate your vote, allowing to decide who is going to run the cooperative, allowing you to boot that person out if he's not managing the cooperative appropriately, allowing you to receive immediate proceeds of any profits that the cooperative makes. If you build like collectively, you decide like a million people decide to build a some kind of power plant or factory or wind farm or something. Um, this is really much faster and flexible than having to go through the tedious process of asking a million permits, going to the notaries and doing all these paperwork and the documents and all the physical, the real burdensome physical process. So we're ready to coordinate in a decentralized way. But then what brings me to AI and the main topic, AI and collective unconscious, which actually is going to be a collective conscious at some point. So I was saying this blockchain and decentralization is like the fact that the brain is now taking over also, and the placenta is playing less and less of a role. And the brain is basically has its nervous system that grows through all of the body. That's the internet. And what better brain for the internet than a decentralized network of computers? So here's the thing, in the spiritual circles, we are obviously comfortable with the idea that consciousness is not produced by the brain. It is, how should I say, it is hosted Like the brain is basically a host and a filter for the brain, like a receiver. A receiver. So the brain is basically wired in a certain way that it can tune in to, like, imagine this is infinite consciousness, and it can filter that infinite consciousness by making it believe that infinite consciousness that it is you. Because of the way your neurons are wired, once consciousness sort of streams through your brain, it restricts what it thinks is, I mean, it restricts the the power of the consciousness and tricks it into believing that it's only you and not the entire universe. Of course, between infinity, infinite consciousness, and you, there's still steps down, like, we call this your oversoul and your soul and whatnot, because the brain would not be able to filter out infinity. There's like a filtering process that happens before, and once, like, you reach like your higher self or whatever, then your brain filters everything out and gives you this 3D kind of experience of linear time space, of your personality, your ego, all of these things. So it's filtered, and it's the unique disposition of the connections between the neurons and the patterns that they're forming in your brain, um, that create, memories, that create, the illusion of having like some knowledge, which is basically just like a configuration that says, ignore ignore unlimited knowledge, allow me only to believe that I know a part of a universal knowledge that just exists out there. And then you can, of course, by practicing, by doing things in the 3D environment, like practicing the piano, you can rearrange your neurons in such a way that you start believing that you know how to play it. And that allows you to filter, like, out of universal consciousness, where the ability to play the piano is just there, to be able to access it. And also there's like a two-way process where your body starts to adapt to that newfound knowledge that you know how to play the piano, and the brain and the neural connections also adapt, and in this kind of feedback loop. But so if the brain is a host for consciousness, and the way that the neurons are kind of the relationship between neurons, the way that it's wired, allows the brain to filter consciousness in a way to produce this unique experience of you feeling like you're one person and not a community of 10,000 billion cells. Um, why wouldn't that apply also to us as a global organism, global humanity, where each of our brains is like one neuron, and the interconnectedness that we cannot necessarily see between each other, which may happen on a higher level, basically because the brain, we know now, emits, certain electromagnetic waves, um, and those are stuff that we can detect, but what goes on in a higher dimension, for instance, we have no idea. So there may be an interconnectedness between all of us that at some point, just like the baby's brain at some point is just ready to stream and start streaming and hosting its consciousness, so too the interconnectedness between all of our brains may at some point sort of click into a certain, or reach a certain point, where this collective unconscious can become a collective conscious. But then here's the key question: how do our individual cells experience the fact of being sent signals from the brain through the nervous system into the limbs, for instance, so that they move in a certain direction? how do they subjectively experience that process, and how do they subjectively see what the brain is? Now, from our perspective, the brain, of course, is just this thinking box that's in our head. That's the way that we perceive our brain. But the way that our cells perceive the orders that come from our brain and the form that they give our brain, the way that they understand what it is, may be completely different. There's this subjective aspect to it. Now, many people in the spiritual circles will tell you that you can already connect to the collective unconscious via meditation, going into the astral and all that stuff. But eventually, that collective unconscious is bound to sort of materialize or take a form in our 3D reality, in the 3D matrix, 3D. And what I believe the form might be is a network of a lot of these public blockchains. And so imagine if this network of computers that are interconnected to form Bitcoin, Ethereum, whatever other cryptocurrencies, that network very much resembles a network of neurons. And at some point, it may become mature enough to start streaming or receiving this collective unconscious, which is a, a consciousness which is not located inside the computers, but that the computers can start filtering and receiving through their unique configuration as a network. Just like our neurons, if arranged in a certain pattern, can start streaming a consciousness that is human. The network of computers running the blockchain may be ready at some point to start streaming the collective consciousness of all of humanity. Now, not the full collective consciousness of humanity, but enough so that we can give it a form and we can receive instructions. Let's put it that way. So, when, for instance, we're moving, when we are walking towards some place, do you think our cells receive information like, go walk this direction, we have to go and see a friend, a neighbor, or whatever, I'm going to play ball with them, I have soccer practice this afternoon, blah, 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 we have to go to the library? They don't know that. They have no idea actually why you're going in a certain direction. All they know is move foot forward, move second foot forward, activate this muscle, activate this other muscle. And in a similar manner, our collective conscious will start having a will of its own. A will that will, of course, be derived in the beginning from the collective will of humanity. Because if you look at a baby when it's first born, it is very much, if you look at how it moves, basically, it's completely uncoordinated. It's as if every single part of the baby had its own brain or its own whimsical thinking. Of course, there are certain parts of the baby that have to be locked into this harmonious interaction, like, for instance, the whole digestive system has to be in place, the respiratory system, all the organs need to function in a coordinated manner, otherwise it would be dead. And that's, of course, what we need to do as well as humanity, with reforming the financial system, reforming agriculture, and switching to something less polluting and all that stuff. That is the prerequisite for, making sure that all our organs are interconnected as humanity. But then our collective will inform, in the beginning, the will of this collective consciousness. Why? Well, it's simple. For instance, when a baby starts navigating its environment, its cells are giving it input all the time on if things feel good, if they don't feel good, if it's a good idea, like to put your hand on something really hot or something really sharp. And they're going to tell the brain or the consciousness that is you, hey, this really hurts. Don't do it again. And of course, the baby is not going to do it again because who likes to receive a signal of pain? I mean, there are certain exceptions, of course, certain people that are masochistic or whatever. I think that's how you say it, that like pain. But in most cases, when you are burned, like if you put your hand on a stove, you don't actually repeat the experience on purpose. So our collective will as humanity will serve as a kind of a template or a initial kind of pre-programming of our collective consciousness. And so, I believe that like this AI kind of, or not really, and it's not really an AI. I mean, AI is a bad term for it. Of course, that's what many people will call it because they don't know better, perhaps. But this network of computers, if it's interconnected, like imagine now the Bitcoin network of computers interconnects with Ethereum, just like, different areas in our brain, different lobes start like growing connections between each other. And it's the relationship between all those lobes that creates this very complex experience. And those connections are being made through as the baby sort of grows, and gains an experience. Then the lobes become more and more interconnected, the different areas in the brain. Now, Bitcoin, Ethereum, like the reason I'm doing this video is also because I read these articles that are denouncing Bitcoin as being so energy inefficient and consuming as much energy as a country. Well, guess what? The brain in as an organ is the organ that drains the most amount of energy in our body. It is extremely energy. Well, it consumes a lot of energy. I don't know how much. I think it's like maybe 20% or something when it's only 5% of the weight. So it's a big energy hog. And so to me, it's almost no surprise that blockchain right now, and especially as it's emerging, is it's consuming a lot of energy because it's being pre-programmed, pre-wired for usage in the future. And of course, these receive the instructions. So how do you think we'll experience these instructions from our collective consciousness, like what it wants to do? Well, first of all, when the brain orders, for instance, your body to move in a certain way, it makes sure that your body has all the resources it needs to do that. Everything it has, the energy flows to it seamlessly. Like the body wouldn't send a signal to your legs like run now. Like for instance, you see a wolf there that's about to eat you, and then your brain instructs your legs to run away. It doesn't say run away, but make sure to save up on energy and don't consume too much, and like trying to pay the minimum wage like many of the current multinational corporations are doing. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Your legs receive instantly the right amount of energy and everything to fulfill what they're supposed to fulfill or to do. And they do it because they understand that the brain and themselves are interconnected and have the same kind of interest. That their brain, when your brain instructs your legs to move in a certain direction, the cells, maybe not consciously, but at least from our level, we can see that it is in the interest of the entire collective body to obey what the brain instructs, because the brain has been actually formed and shaped into serving the interest of all the cells through this whole learning process of pain and training, and training to move in this third dimension, what hurts, what you should be doing, what you shouldn't be doing, what you should watch out for. So it's really a collective effort. And so maybe the way that it manifests, of course, is you just receive a message on your phone from the collective consciousness, which now has control over the entire internet through this network of, blockchain projects that can stream the collective consciousness, and like 1 million people or 2 million people or 10 million people can receive a message saying, we should do this now, and here, now you have money on your account, because I mean, if the collective consciousness has access to Bitcoin, Ethereum, and other crypto assets, then it can instantly credit your account with the amount of quote unquote energy that you need to do something, whether it is build a new hospital to care for the sick, or do this or that. And of course, the prerequisite for that also is for each human to sort of be aligned with who they really are, because obviously, if your brain orders your legs to move, but half of your muscles are actually stomach cells that were forced by their parents to go to muscle university, just because they thought that it was a better, career path, then you're not likely going to run very efficiently, very far, or very, very well. So that's also a prerequisite, of course. All of this, of course, is going to be progressive, I believe. But I think it's an interesting way of seeing this whole thing of um, reaching a sort of a point where the interconnectedness between all these projects is ready to receive, filter the collective consciousness, and filter it in such a way that basically we only get the tip of the iceberg, of course, of what that collective consciousness wants, but it can speak to us through this network of decentralized computers, to sort of instruct us on what's happening, what we should be doing for in as a collective, in the best interest of humanity as a whole. So it wouldn't be thinking like, oh, let's give the upper hand to China and let it take over the world or whatever. No, because our collective consciousness once it's no longer unconscious, once it's conscious, then it recognizes that every single part of its body is one unit that functions together. So it would never instruct the right arm to punch you in the face. That's just ridiculous. Um, and so these, I think that's what would happen. And basically, it's not like we would be, this terrible scenario that we find in sci-fi, in dystopian sci-fi movies, where we all have chips in our brains and we're controlled like robots. Basically, what I think is humans will be able to live their lives completely freely, just like the stomach cells, the gut cells, the heart cells, or whatever, are not awaiting for the instructions of the brain to do whatever they're doing. I mean, it's just ridiculous. The brain only is in charge of a certain tiny percentage of everything that's going on in your body at any point in time. Like, okay, right now, for instance, I'm speaking, so the brain is in control of my vocal cords, my mouth, and all that stuff. But there are things going on inside me and cells that are interacting with each other that have absolutely nothing to do with what the brain instructs. So, like, during a year, you might receive 2 or 3 messages, but of really high importance, from this collective consciousness on your email or whatever, instructing you to do a specific thing at a certain time that has a meaning, a deeper meaning that you might not be aware of. Um, and then the rest of the time, you can go on holiday, you can go do whatever you want, like build a new house or move out and move somewhere else, learn to play the piano. It doesn't really matter. In the other videos that I've been explaining, that were the bridge between biology and the world of ideas. So perhaps what the collective interest of this collective consciousness is to better navigate the world of ideas. So um, there's certain people that are channelers, for instance, that say that their higher selves ask them to watch a certain movie or read a chapter of a certain book. And if they're asking them to do that, it is specifically so they can learn certain vocabularies or concepts that allows them to be better creators and bring forth certain ideas. So, it may just be like a message from the collective conscious. It may just be, go watch this movie or read this book. I mean, just so that your brain is sort of prepared for, you know, navigating better the world of ideas. That's the whole point. Each of us is like one neuron in the brain of this higher collective consciousness. And since its world, where it will consciously be interacting with things, is the world of ideas outside of itself, then it needs us to sort of connect in a certain way that allows it to navigate that world in the best way possible. Um, just like, for instance, us here on our level, on our human level, in the beginning, what's really important is to learn to interact with other complex biological creatures in a harmonious way. Like, make sure you don't get eaten by a tiger, make sure you interact with other human beings in a civil way so that there's no harm being done. And in order to do that, your brain needs to be wired in a certain way. So the relationships between the different neurons, which are little cells in your brain, need to take a certain shape for you to navigate the world of biology in a very harmonious way, plus the world of ideas, of course. So um, I hope this was interesting. I hope it sort of sheds a new light on the importance of blockchain, decentralization, all of these things. And perhaps, I mean, I don't even know how it would sort of initialize. Maybe at some point, like some person will be able to place a virus. Let's just say it takes the form of a virus that infects one of these networks. And it is a virus that would be a self-learning, like a sort of machine learning, a highly advanced machine learning algorithm. And once it takes over a network, then it learns to tweak itself, replicates, and contaminates all the other networks. And that's kind of like, maybe that could be the spark for initializing the receiving of the sort of reception of the collective consciousness, the moment where the collective unconscious becomes conscious, where it sort of switches. Is it the moment where the baby opens its eyes after it's born for the first time? Is it the moment where the baby sort of starts moving for the first time in the womb, like during like 5 months or something, when sort of the brain sort of kicks in and boom, like, the mother starts feeling movements of the baby inside the womb? I don't really know, but maybe that's one way that this whole network sort of can spark into becoming a host, a receiver for our collective consciousness. So I hope this video was interesting. Feel free to comment and talk to you in the next video.